when I was about 16, maybe 15, I had an English teacher that knew that I was up to no good. And he gave out an assignment to the class where he wanted everybody to read a book. That book, I have no idea what it was, but I probably never will. But he came up to me and gave me a book that was different than anybody else's. And he said, read this. And I saw it, and it was titled Always Running by Luis Rodriguez. The first book I probably ever read on my own from cover to cover. It changed the way I saw things. It changed the way that I looked at the world, and it gave me some hope that I wasn't alone. So, just wanting to share that with my audience because this episode is very special to me. So thank you, Luis, for being here.
Man, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
I know I briefly introduced you, but would you mind kind of giving us a little bit more details as your journey, unfolded to where you are now?
Well, in general, you'll find that I have 16 books, actually. I got a lot of books. I love writing. All my books in all genres. I was the Poet Laureate of the city of Los Angeles for a couple of years. I work in prisons and juvenile halls and jails for 40 years. Mostly volunteers, but the last few years I've been getting paid to come in there now.
Mm-hmm.
And I created a beautiful culture center in Sylmar in the northeast San Fernando Valley called Tia Chucha's Centro Cultural and Bookstore. This is stuff people may not know about me.
Yeah. Awesome. So I was looking up on other things that you've done, and I saw that you gave a TED Talk recently, in the past few years, and it was on something called the Four Connections. It really resonated with me because everything that you touched on, I feel like I'm trying to do in my life. But having you explain it was very helpful. So would you mind kind of like giving us a little synopsis on that talk and giving us some pointers on what the Four Connections are?
Yeah, so these ideas come from, I've been doing indigenous spiritual practices for 25 years or more. I do that because my mother was Tarahumara from Chihuahua, Mexico.
Okay.
And I've decided to go to that. I don't proselytize, preach. I don't convert nobody. It's just me and the way that I got myself. I've been in recovery now for 28 years, and most of it has been through indigenous practices. So what the Four Key Connections recognize is that we're alienated in this culture. We're alienated from who we are. We're alienated from nature. We really don't understand it. We're alienated from relationships. There's so much division, so much, battles, wars, people fighting over non-essential things. To me, borders are not essential, but people die for them. Belief systems, people are dying for them. There's so many ways, politics, that really, white supremacy, all these things. So what I am putting forward is the idea that our young people in particular need to have these four key connections. The first key connection is connection with nature. Nature is all around us. Nature is really our best teacher. You learn from nature, you learn about the seasons, you learn about the trees, the plants, you learn that many of them are healing. They got healing properties. Indigenous people from all over the world understood this. You learn that within nature, you learn how things live and die, how they get reborn, how flowers and beauty is created like we should do in the world. You learn about just the way things operate. And it's important to know these things because they also are helpful for us, guiding us as we negotiate ourselves through the world. So to me, it's really important to have that key connection, nature. The other one is the connection to our natures, our own nature. And that means, who are we? What are we here to do? What is our purpose? What's our passions? We forget about this. Nobody teaches that. Almost schooling to me was just trying to get us to conform, trying to get us to end up working in the industry that happened to be around East LA or whatever, get us to be like our parents and not who we were supposed to be. And of course, our parents fall into it. I don't blame them. My parents did not like that I wanted to be an artist because I was a graffiti artist, and then I did other art. I did murals. They didn't like it. They didn't like that I liked music. I once tried to play saxophone. It didn't work out because my brother couldn't beat me up anymore, so he beat up my saxophone one time, killed it. So But they didn't like that I wanted to be a writer. They thought writing was a waste of time. I don't blame them, but to me, it's more about find your own genius. What are your gifts are? What are you here to do? That to me is getting to know our own nature. And the third connection is the nature of our relationships. We are very estranged from each other. We don't trust each other. A lot of it's because there's been so much mistrust, politics and domination, white supremacy, all these things has got us all fighting each other. We don't know who's who and what's what. When I was growing up and the body was there in Los Angeles, I I did it because it was my neighborhood to protect. I wasn't there to fight other Mexicans, but it then became we got to go after other people that look just like us. You know what I'm saying? We're
Hmm.
fighting people that in different neighborhoods. Some of them were even. I had a cousin that was in the rival neighborhood. You know, sometimes we were trying to go after our own family, but
Yeah.
everything we're going to war with ourselves. I took part in it, but then eventually I realized I don't want to do this no more. Uh, so that's important. The relationships, which really comes down to the golden rule, which I think is very important: treat others as you want to be treated. But it's about
Mm-hmm.
respecting people, respecting yourself, and having your own dignity, and never taking anyone else's dignity away. And then the fourth one is the nature of the divine, relationship to the divine. Now, people call this many things. It's connected to the unseen world, the spirit world, the world that's there and is part of who we are. We have spirit, everything has spirit. But and it's not religion because I think religion is what people try to understand these things, and I'm okay with it. Whatever religion you are, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? Follow the because every path is narrow. You know what I'm saying? Every path, whether it's Christian, Buddhist, you know, a Muslim, whatever it might be, even indigenous, it's very narrow. But that road that we're all on is the same road. We're all trying to get to the same place, and that is to be as whole and complete, as healthy and as autonomous and as connected as we can. So to me, that's we got different ways of getting there, and it's all valid. You know what I'm saying? But the
Hmm.
divine is getting to that unseen spiritual connection that we need to have just to get through the material world.
Yeah, in your TED talk, you talk about society and being out of alignment.
Hmm.
And I'm assuming that you mean that there's one of these four, or a couple of these four
Yeah,
elements that we're just not in tune with.
really, all of them. Because you think about it, we're not in tune with nature, so therefore we'll dominate nature, take from the minerals, take the oil, take now our climate's off. You know what I'm saying? There's poison in the water and our air. We're misaligned completely. Nature teaches you take, but not more than you need to, because it will regenerate if you leave it enough. But
Right.
if you take too much, it'll hurt us, and that's where we're at now. The same with the nature of our relationships about who we are. You know what I'm saying? We don't understand who we are. We don't make space for that. We if you can't either work, get a job, and or go to war, you're not legitimately important. You know what I mean? You only
Yeah.
have value if somebody gives you a price. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
think that's misaligned, and also the relationship with each other is misaligned. We're at war with everybody. Everybody's fighting. People are killing people for, like I said, non-essential things. There's very few essential things you would want to kill people for. That might not saying there may not be, but for the most part, people are dying for nothing. Look at all the wars, even the wars that I grew up with, which is more than you, but I'm sure even the wars that you experienced in your life.
Yeah.
Why? It would waste of time. Politicians create them and pour people into fighting them. And then, of course, the relationship with the divine, which to me is just very distorted as well. I'm not against anybody's religion, but I do think institutions can be distorted. I do think some religions have distorted the relationship with the divine. They make it about um, what you believe in. Like I always tell people, okay, let's just even take Christianity. Jesus never says, be a good Christian, be a better Christian. Never says that. He gives you the two, laws: have a meaningful, respectful relationship with your God, have a meaningful and respectful relationship with others. You know what I'm saying? He tells you he gives you stories about the importance of this, of the blessed are the poor. He has these great things,
Yeah.
and he never says be a good Christian. My idea though
Yeah.
is if you follow and be a decent human being, you're going to be a good Christian. But that's really what it's saying: how to be decent and whole and dignified in this world. That's what I believe all these teachings are, all of them. So I think that's what I'm saying. our society has misaligned everything and distorted all these things.
Yeah, I think you alluded to in your talk as well. You alluded to seeing this transformation or seeing these forward connections take place while teaching them to certain individuals and watching their transformations take place. Can you give us an example of somebody that's used these four key connections to make their own transformation?
Well, you know, I have to say, when I work in the prisons and juvenile halls, I present some of these things, and I've seen people really take it to heart. I get that it's
Mhm.
hard for a lot of people. Again, sometimes their own belief systems stop them. But I think that when you take it to heart, I don't care what religion you are, it's going to do good by you. And I
Yeah.
will have to say, my oldest son is probably a great example. He was in a gang, as you know, from always running. I was trying to help him. He ended up doing, and this is part of my second memoir, the Calls You Back. I get more into my relationship with my son. He ended up doing around 15 years in prison, and he was
Mhm.
heavy duty involved with gangs. You know, drugs, the whole thing. He had three kids and three baby mamas. Never married anyone. You know, he did the whole, you know, street life thing, and he ended up in prison. Uh, what I had to do was try to help my son reconnect again to those four things, you know, and
Yeah.
he took it to heart. I didn't save him. I think I always tell him, you saved yourself by taking some of these teachings, some of this knowledge, and he did it in prison. He actually sobered up in prison. He actually got a gang life in prison, which is, you know, very difficult. It's very dangerous. I was worried about him, but he told me, "Don't worry about it. I'll be okay." Yeah, people went after him. Even guards messed with him. Everybody went after him, but he stood by it. And eventually, they just let him go. They just respected him. He's not part of our life anymore, you know. And he
Yeah.
did really good. So when he got out of prison, he did 13 and a half years, the last stretch. He just went to his what do you call it, spiritual practices. He became a Mexica a danzante, which is the Aztec dance. He's been doing that for over 10 years since he got out of prison, and he's actually been mentoring young people. We have a young warriors group out of Tia Chucha's Culture Center, and he's helped them over the years. He's also been part of our trauma to transformation program, which we send people, artists, poets, theater people into these institutions, the prisons, juvenile halls, and parolee housing. And my son has gone in there as well. He's trying to help others. So I think he's an example. He's 46 years old. He's a father and grandfather, and he's trying to be able to live, even though he's had this very terrible past. He made many mistakes. Um, he now tries to live with the dignity of a conscious, aware human being.
I firmly believe that it's never too late to change.
Mhm.
And I don't think that anybody is past the point of redemption.
That's
And
right.
I just think that as humans, we tend to judge each other way too much, even though we're all going through very similar struggles.
Yeah.
I remember hearing Dr. Wayne Dyer when I was going through my transformation. He said we're not humans going through a spiritual experience. He said we're spirits going through a human experience.
Yeah.
And it's always resonated with me because I just feel like, you know, we could just tap into that again, that spirituality and that greater spirit that is trying to like use us to, you know, to do the greater good. We would be a lot nicer to each other, maybe even a lot
Yeah.
nicer to ourselves too.
Yeah. And I think that the material world we're in is the test of all that. You know what I'm saying? This is it.
Mhm.
I mean, we're given a body, we're given a brain, we're given all these things. What are we going to do with it? Spirit is tapped into so we can learn, make our mistakes, learn more, get wise. And my whole thing when I talk to the prisoners is you have a choice when you get out of prison. Either you bless the world and community with your knowledge, your experience, your wisdom. You know what I'm saying? You mentor somebody, you help people. You don't have to be this gangster killer or your whole life. Eventually, you say, "Hey, I've been there. I made mistakes. I totally wish I hadn't, but here I am. What am I going to do? What I've been given? Bless the world, or you can curse the world. You know what I'm saying? They're
Mhm.
still hateful. They're still full of pain. They're still want to you go after. I said, those are the choices you got. You're either going to curse it or you're going to bless it. Which one are you going to do?
Oh man, that's got to be pretty inspiring to see people that have been through so much just have that hope and have that fight to be able to, you know, deal with all those challenges and still try to, you know, do something better.
Yeah, and because I've done this for many years, I worked with guys that did 38 years in prison and are now doing really good. One guy in particular, another guy did 28 years. He was a shot caller for one of the big black gangs here in LA. Bad news, but since he's been out of prison, he's been a poet. He's been a mentor. We even hired him for our trauma and transformation program, and they let him into juvenile hall after 28 years. They've got
Wow.
permission to come in there and talk to these youngsters. He's doing
Wow.
really good. So I totally have seen people who you wouldn't give the time of day, maybe a few years ago, whatever. Now they're really dignified and they're carrying themselves with a lot of bravery and strength and knowledge. And that's what I think you want to be able to struggle with. I'm one of those people, my son, others, all of us have done things. Now, I don't like to say I've been formerly incarcerated, but I don't ever say anything like that because, to be honest with you, my troubles were all in my youth. I was
Yeah.
in jails and around LA. I was in juvenile hall. I was in two adult facilities. But by 18, I was done with jails. By 19, I was done with drugs, heroin. And by 20, La Vida Loca, I'm gone. So I was fortunate to get out early.
Hmm.
There's guys doing 20, 30, 40 years, even my son, 15 years. Those are the guys who are really formerly incarcerated. And those are the ones that I want to work with and guide because I never forgot any of those people. I got out of it. I got help. I got mentored. I got a lot of people that really stood by me. But now I got to do it for others.
That's amazing. You talk about also being a whole man,
Mm.
and I thought that was really powerful because I really think that that's not talked about enough, like amongst men, and maybe it's just not taught to enough of us so that we can pass it down.
Mm.
But can you just elaborate on that? What a whole man is?
Well, I kind of look at all these men and me included as kind of fractured. We're kind of broken up. You know what I'm saying? Trauma
Mhm.
fractures you, pain. But I think what other things that fractures you is the kind of society that tells you to be this tough guy. Don't
Mhm.
cry. Don't express yourself. It mutates us as men, and when if you grew up in the street, you know what I'm talking about. You
Mhm.
can't be a sensitive man in the street,
Nah.
and 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 they take it out of you and they'll beat you up or them and then you don't want to be there. So I grew up with that. I was a very sensitive kid growing up. Didn't last very long. By 9 I got jumped, and I said I'm never going to be jumped by anybody. I'm never going to be on the ground humiliated by anybody. Then I became this tough guy where I was fighting everybody. I was stabbing people. I shot people. I was a murderous row at 16. I was attempted murder when I was 17. I was just this mutated human being.
Mhm.
But I did what the streets expected of me, what even family expects you to do. You know what I'm saying? They push this thing. So I think the whole struggle for a man is to get back to being a whole person with emotional life, with, be sensitive, be imaginative, care. It doesn't mean you can't be, to me, toughness is not about the facade. You know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
about having backbone, having courage, of
Strength.
being persistent, strength that anybody could have. Women have, as you know,
Mhm.
women carry a lot of the stuff. I've seen women do stuff that men would never do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think it's that kind of strength we need it. That's the real toughness. But this facade, I'm gonna, you can't mess with me, or I'm bullying somebody that's vulnerable. That to me is not what a man is.
Yeah. How do you think society cultivates this self-destructive like mentality amongst men?
Well, unfortunately, many, many years ago, we became what they call the patriarchy. And
Mhm.
that kind of turned everything upside down. Um, Most societies were either matrilineal, or women were with the men. You know what I'm saying? Men had their roles to play, but they were also not taken away from being fully human. If you
Mhm.
had to do it, let's just go way back and say the women were at home taking care of babies. Um, the men had to do something to go out and hunt. Okay, the people knew that, but when you come back home, you're there in the same nurturing place that the woman is. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? But
Yeah.
what started to happen is some of these guys thought they were hunting and they were tough, and they come in there and start being tough at home. They couldn't forget that you did your role. The women had to do their thing, but then they started dominating. You know how the dominant code starts coming in, and it
Mm-hmm.
starts with men, then it starts with certain races, certain cultures, certain societies, and pretty soon the dominant thing is moving big, big. But we've been living under this dominant male um, oriented world that has hurt women, it hurt kids, and hurt men. We get imprisoned in this idea of what a man is. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think my efforts, I do a lot of work with men for, quarter of a century now. I've been working with men, all manner of men from all walks of life, to let them know there's a lot of ways to go. Again, you can keep your backbone, you can keep your strength, your courage, you can keep your protective nature, but you don't have to lose the feminine side of you, because both men and women have feminine and masculine inside of them in different proportions. And you can still be a fuller human being. So that's what I try to teach. I try to be that sensitive kid that I had to hide and push away when I was young. Came back as an adult, writing books, being imaginative, working with art, being more reflective. All these things are now that I do. And of course, I'm still capable. If I had to protect somebody, defend myself, I do whatever I can. I didn't just lose that part, but I also have this other part that gets me not to be this terrible, destructive kind of man that we some of us have in our homes. You know what I mean? My
Mm-hmm.
dad used to be. My dad was just what we call frio. He was cold, emotionally detached. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? He never
Right.
would say "I love you." You know, he never did these dad things. He's just a guy that worked, came home, he's tired, don't mess with me. Okay, next day he's gone. I'm glad that he came home. Some guys don't have a dad, But I always thought I don't need a dad like that. He wasn't much of a dad, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of us grow up with that kind of model, the model of, hey man, the dad is detached. My mom frustrated. She did all the emotional issues. She's the
Mm-hmm.
one when you got hurt, she's the one to carry. But when you did something bad, she's the one that spanked you. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
the idea is, I grew up with a distorted sense of what a man is. I had to learn not to be that kind of person. I fight it within myself. This emotionally detached person. I have to keep struggling with that, and I've gotten better about it. My sons. I always say I love my sons and daughter, my grandkids, great grandkids now. I got great grandkids. I love you. I say it all the time, and now they say it to me. I got my three grown sons at home. They're grown men and they're great. They contribute, they give, they work, they do the yard work, whatever. We got a weight system going in our porch. All these men are working out because I want them to be healthy, but we all treat each other with respect. You know what I'm saying? Nobody
Mm-hmm.
yells and screams and everything, and everybody's respectful. And I say that's the way it should be. That's the modeling that I want to do. And again, I'm always saying I love you to my sons. Well, they come and hug me. That's okay. That's not unmanly.
Right. It's so powerful when the dad can do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm a father now, and I don't think I've ever had a problem saying I love you to my kids, but I do find myself being emotionally detached
hmm,
and trying to be that tough person around them,
yeah,
but I always have to remind myself, that they're humans too. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
and they don't have to experience the things the way that I experience them.
yeah. It's very important because I grew up again. My mom was the one that hit us, and and if you grow up in these Mexican Latino homes, she used everything. The chancla was famous, the manguera, the hose, the cinto, the cinturón, whatever it was, the gancho. In other words, she used everything to beat us up with. Okay, and I never thought of it as abuse, and I don't even know how much it was abuse because she didn't overdid it, but she did it enough times. I'm sure nowadays we would have been taken away from the house.
Right.
I grew up like that. So when I had my first kids over 40 years ago, I hit them too, and I never thought about it. Somebody actually saw me, and I was in a meeting, and Ramiro was just a tiny little boy, my son, and he was just making noise. He's being a regular boy. He was being ruckus, but it was no big deal. I hit him, and somebody said, "Why are you hitting him?" And I thought about it. I said, well, that's what you do. That's what my mom did to me. So,
Right.
I finally made a decision. I'm not going to hit my kids no more. It's a hard decision because I have three men and a daughter. So I'm not going to hit them more. I have to figure out other ways to discipline them. And there is
Right.
discipline. You need to have that. But I
Right.
didn't have to strike them. I didn't have to knock them down. I didn't have to use words to humiliate them. And, I had to use other ways to teach them without them feeling that they're going to be hurt. And I learned to do that with my kids finally. My oldest kid suffered, but my youngest boys especially didn't grow up that way, with a lot of pain and rage and me knocking them around. And they're much healthier for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I find myself with my 5-year-old, my son. I find myself being more patient and just actually just like getting down on a knee and just talking to him
There you go.
and just
Wow.
asking him like what's going on, like how are you
Yeah.
feeling right now, like
Yeah.
if he starts acting crazy or whatever. So yeah, it's hard though.
I know.
It's
They can
hard.
get on your nerve, but you got to learn. And you know what? In the long run, it worked out for me. Now, me and my sons, they respect me. Honestly, I did not give my dad the time of day. It's sad. He
Yeah.
wasn't, he was a hardworking guy, but you know what? Even to the day he died, I didn't talk to him for about 30, 40 years. That's sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, and I don't want that. But the only way I'm not going to have that is for me to be a really good dad, And
Yeah.
again, they're all grown up, so I treat them like adults now. They're not kids no more, so now I got to talk to them like an adult.
Right.
But we, how do you say, we help raise them. Me, and my wife right now, she's the stepmom to my oldest kids, and then we have these two boys from her. She's also very good. We work together, and then she's a very loving mom, and that helped. And then I'm a very loving dad. You know what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
together we help make it work.
And you're cultivating whole men, like
That's
I
exactly
feel
where
like,
the wholeness comes in. Yeah,
yeah.
so then they go in the world whole. We're always coming in not entirely sure of ourselves and maybe fractured a little bit, but you want to know how to get whole. Even when you
Mhm.
feel like you're not, what do you need to do? Or what ritual you need to do, or what practice you have to do. I love writing. I do my indigenous practice. I do whatever I can. That gets me whole. I get it that when you're in the world, you start fracturing a little bit, but I find my centering. I find coming home inside me. I find ways to do that. People just need to know. There's all kinds of things. There's meditation. There's all kinds of things. There's even exercise, um, boxing. I was an amateur boxer, so
Mhm.
what gets me going is a good workout. And what I do is I jump rope. Even
Mhm.
though I'm going to be 67 years old this year, I jump rope because when I was an amateur boxer, that's what we did, and I love that exercise. So I'm
Right.
doing the punching bag and jump roping plus some weights here and there. In other words, that to me keeps me healthy and strong, and I do what has centered me for years is jumping rope. Really meditative to me. I don't recommend it for everybody. Somebody who's got other things to do, go for it. They love yoga, whatever. But it's always good to have these things that helps bring you together when you're feeling a little bit, not all there.
Out of alignment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you talk about poverty a lot in some of your talks and just in general, the things that you've experienced and things that you've seen probably throughout your life, dealing with other people in other cities and even probably other countries. Um, what advice could you give to somebody that's in a surrounding that has a lot of
Mhm.
poverty to how can they be successful in that environment?
Well, what I would say is the worst poverty isn't so much the material poverty, that's bad enough, but what I call the poverty spirit.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
have enough material pain and material poverty, people start losing interest. They start losing interest in their life, what happens in the community. Sometimes they're the ones that cause all the hassles and cause the problems. So my thing is, um, don't lose your spirit and be looking at wealth differently. Wealth comes from, again, our genius, our gifts, expanded to include our relationships, expanded to include how we walk in this world, what treasures we can bring to the world from ourselves, from our work, from our creativity. um, I think there's poverty that destroys, and poverty just kind of like a negative capability. You look at what's missing, you think I can fill in. I'll give an example, and again, I want to bring up my parents. I want to bring up my mom, who was poor, native, Tarumara, but she grew up in a very poor ghetto. She didn't grow up indigenous, but she always knew what she was. But at 9 years old, she ended up picking cotton in South Texas. That's what you do. you're old enough to work, start working. She'd been working her whole life. So one thing I noticed about her that when we were running really unstable with poverty, my dad had jobs. They wouldn't pay him very well. He ended up getting lots more jobs you can imagine. We had days where we couldn't pay our gas, couldn't pay our electricity bill. We had to take cold baths, the whole thing. And there was even a point where me and my brothers and sisters and my mom were homeless for a while. But one thing my mom would do, she would go around finding broken furniture, and she would bring it home and start fixing it up. And she was also a seamstress because she worked as a costurera, but she wanted to use her skills, and she had a sewing machine that she would make all the upholstery. She made this great furniture that she sold for very cheaply, but it was made beautifully. And she taught me how to hammer. It wasn't my dad, it was my mom, how to use a hammer. And she made something like that. She would find one day she found this doll face, like a doll part, and she started making dolls, and she started buying just the doll faces, and she would make these beautiful dolls with beautiful dresses, and then she would sell them. You know what I'm saying? In other words, she figured out a way to be creative in the midst
Mhm.
of a lot of poverty. And I think that that's what I would say is the way out of chaos and when you don't have much is to be creative about what's missing and how can I fill in that gap. And that's what I find when people step up. I even look at these undocumented people that sell food in the corner. They figured something out. They figured a way to survive. I hate it when people put them down or
Yeah.
they're trying to make something happen. My dad, again, a good side of him was that he worked all the time when he was in Mexico and he didn't have anything. He used to sell chicharrones, down the
Mhm.
street. You do whatever you can just to make something of your life and step up. And I did the same thing. I worked in all this industry. When I got out of the La Vida Loca, the crazy life, I had to work in all these jobs. And some of them I liked, some I didn't. I learned welding, pipe fitting, mechanics, carpentry. I learned a lot of good skills. But then one day I was thinking, it's a good job. I could do this forever, but I really want to be a writer. And I
Mhm.
went on my own to write. And now I got all these books. I went self-employed about 28 years ago. The year that I recovered was the year that Always Writing came out. It all kind of coincided, and I went self-employed. And I've been self-employed ever since. I've been working for myself. And then through me and my wife, with whatever money I was getting off royalties and things, instead of buying a swimming pool or Lexus like somebody might do, we built the Achuchas 20 years ago. We built
Mhm.
that beautiful space. It was for the community. It came out of the work that I did, and we filled a gap. There was no art galleries, there was no bookstores, there was no cultural spaces, and we created something that was missing in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. So to me, that's what it is. And when the economy's bad, think about how to be creative and how to make your mark and how to give back by your own genius. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I've heard you say that a few times now, to find your genius.
Hmm.
And I think that's really, really important. Uh, I know I always had a inclination to writing, and I
Hmm.
always had like a desire and an affinity of just raps and hip hop and just lyrics.
Hmm.
I was a kind of
Hmm.
person that when I was younger, I would listen to songs, but I would also go print out the lyrics from
Hmm.
online so I could read and see how like artists wrote their raps. And so
Hmm.
eventually I started writing, but then I I would hide it.
Well,
Like
yeah,
I wouldn't let people know that that's what I
sure.
did. And
Yeah.
then finally I got the courage to show people, and then that started turning into me doing shows, and then it started turning
Yeah.
into recording albums, and then
There you
before I
go.
knew it I was like touring the country.
There you go, man. Well, you made your way and you didn't let all that poverty be the barriers. You went and found a way around the barriers. And that's what I think we have to do. I love hip hop because it's a great hip hop came out of the South Bronx when it had nothing. And poor black and brown kids got together and created a whole new culture. And it grew and it blew up, and the whole world gets it. If you go to any impoverished area, there's hip hop kids in their own languages. It doesn't even, they find a way because language is one way that hip hop got strong, but also the writing on the walls and also
Mhm.
the dance and all kinds of ways that hip hop is a good example, and I think I even like that about East LA, the low riding culture, the cholo culture too, the way the style is. And I don't like the violence part, but I love the culture. I love low rider cars. That took a lot of imagination with poor people when Detroit was getting rid of all their cars, and Chicanos would get them and fix them up. You know what I'm saying? They were old cars, all rusty cars, and they would find a way to make them look beautiful and amazing. Now there's a whole big culture on it. It's a culture that other parts of the world are now. I was in Tokyo. There's a big lowrider scene,
Right. Yeah.
huge, amazing. I was there. I was able to talk to people, and of course, they liked that I was Chicano. You're Chicano, and they honor us. They people say, well, they appropriate us. You know what? I think they really respect us. I think it's out of respect and honor. It's different because they always say this is Chicano. You know what I'm saying? This comes
Right.
from these people. So I think that's how to be, as we're pointing out, creative and how to be strong in the midst of all these things that block you. There's so much. Racism is real. Discrimination is real. All these things are real, and I'm glad that people are stepping up against it, and they've been doing it for a long time. But they're also finding a way to say, I'm not going to let that bother me or stop me. I'm not
Mhm.
going to let them just put me in a victim box, and I'm not going to do nothing. And again, what you're proving, like so many young people over the years, is you can do it with your own voice. You can do it with your own skills. That's what I mean. The genius is in everybody. It's different for everybody. People
Right.
think genius is just special people. Only Einstein. You know what I mean?
Right.
Einstein had a certain genius, but every one of us has something, and it's proven when you look about these inner city poor kids that made a whole culture with nothing, and look how big that got. You know what I'm saying?
I never knew that that's where the lowrider culture came from.
Hmm. It came from the East LA Mexican youth, Chicano kids. There's a lot of stuff that comes out now. It's big. For example, tattoos. There was always tattoos, but Chicanos had a certain style. They call it
Mhm.
black and gray, fine line. But that was the style that Chicanos perfected and created. And in the early 70s, 60s, only white people could be tattoo artists because racist. They weren't any. So
Right.
I have a friend who broke through that. He was the first Chicano who became a tattoo artist because they were copying the black and gray style. They were copying the
Um,
Chicano style. These white guys. So he came in there and says, "Hey, I'm an originator," and somebody hired him. You're right. I got it. We got it from the Chicanos. I mean, some white guy. He figured out. Yeah, you're right. It's really yours. Guy hired him. Now he's the ink master, Freddie Negrete. He works over at the Shamrock Social Club in Hollywood, on Sunset Boulevard there in West Hollywood. He's a big guy. He's done celebrities. Now everybody has tattoos, right? Hip hop stars, basketball players, celebrities. Now black and gray is everywhere. I've been around the world. I've been to Europe and black and gray, but nobody really knows the origins.
yeah.
I have to tell them, and they're like, "Really?" I've been in New York City where all these people are all, but hip hop people all wear black and gray tattoos, and they still don't get that it started in our streets. Part of the lowrider culture, part of what the cholo culture was. But that's what we do. Everybody creates their own way out of the mess they're in.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I definitely learned something new today that
Mhm.
it just makes it kind of connects some dots for me because I'm a hip hop head, but I'm also like Mexican, and so
Mhm.
I have that historical connection.
Yeah.
Um, so something fun for the listeners. I am a big fan of Snowfall,
Yeah.
and when I heard that
Mhm.
you had a part in that show,
Yeah.
I was pretty excited because I love that show. I've
Good.
been like watching ever since it started.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about your role
Yeah.
in
So
Snowfall?
I've been a script consultant for about 3 TV shows.
Hmm.
Snowfall was the biggest. It's FX, and I have to give credit to John Singleton. Uh, I met him in Watts. We were doing a panel, and I read a poem to Watts, and he really loved it. And he came up to me and he says, "I want to stay in touch with you." Okay, and you know how it is. You meet people and then you don't see them again. But he reached out to me and said, "Hey, we got this new TV show called Snowfall. I want you to be a script consultant, especially for the Mexican end, because it's 3 parts, right?
Right.
It's the black community, it's the Mexican community, and then it's the CIA,
Yeah.
that part." Um, so I have to give homage to him because he passed away, as you know.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know how many years it's been, 3 years now. And it was sad because he was young, 50 years old. He had I think, a heart condition, and nobody really knew about it. And he was trying to do big things. He was even talking to me about maybe we can make something out of Always Running, which is really
Oh.
hard to do. And I was like, dude, if you and me work together, it was sad. It's just the nature. It's not really about Always Running. It's more like the sadness that he's gone. But what
Mhm.
happened is I was in there for 2 seasons, and I was able to try to. The whole idea was to get the authenticity. I felt that their Mexican stuff was really inauthentic. I tried really hard. Some of it stayed. The black stuff was much more better put together.
Yeah.
And for a while, even the CIA stuff was not right. And I know about that stuff because I was a journalist. I was a journalist in San Bernardino when the planes would come in with the cocaine
Mhm.
through the dry lakes. It was a big deal. That's how they brought it in from Colombia through Mexico, Central America, Mexico. You
Yeah.
know, they left the Caribbean routes, which was where Miami got all the cocaine. That's all gone, and they started going through there. And it was also supported by the CIA to help fund the war against Sandinistas in Nicaragua and also other revolutionary rebels in El Salvador and Guatemala and other places. So as a journalist, I saw this whole thing, and DEA guys were talking to me because as journalists, they don't mind. And I learned a lot. I learned that it was coming out of Mexico, Central America, Colombia with the original stuff. And they wouldn't tell me that the CIA was involved, but you'll be surprised if you get to know some of these detectives and some of these people, they do tell you things. They were
Mhm.
starting to open up to me about how some of the stuff was going on. I mean, I'm telling you, I learned a lot. But here's the other thing. I went during the Contra War. I actually went to Nicaragua and Honduras. I was
Oh
actually
wow.
there covering that war. I got bombed at twice. I
Oh
got shot
wow.
at with 50 caliber bullets, and I got an injured. Nobody, I mean, somebody was watching over me. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
made it, and I learned a lot. I saw the Contra rebels with. They weren't these rebels who were in the jungles and all starving with beards. They were highly resourced. They had tents. They had weapons, all U.S. stuff, and they were the ones that were playing the drug stuff to get the money to pay for a lot of this stuff. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I
Yeah.
found out all these things. Now, of course, nobody was going to listen to me. I tried to get some things published. I think only left publications published what I had. But the mainstream wasn't. But then this guy named Gary Webb out of the San Jose
Gary
Mercury
Webb.
wrote
Yeah.
that story. Big story. He wrote a lot about it. He has a whole book that I have called, I forget the name of it. Something about the shadow. I forget the name of it. It's a great book. And he ended up committing suicide, but he exposed a lot of this. So in Snowfall, I had to help them develop that part because I don't think they really had it right. And it wasn't a bunch of crazy CIA agents. It was very normal people with suits and ties, probably families, good Americans that were playing into this. And then the other thing that happened is I created a character in one of the Mexican side, and I wanted to do that. The sad thing about it is when John Singleton died. First of all, I'm really glad that I worked on Snowfall, met some great people, uh,
Mhm.
producers and directors. I'm really good friends with one of the directors there that did a lot of scenes. He's a really great guy. Uh, but when he died, there was a lot of tension with John, and so when he died, they wouldn't hire me for the third season because I was linked with John Singleton. That's just the politics in Hollywood. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but beyond that, I'm glad I did it. Again, I like to do these things to bring the authenticity. Hollywood can get really weird and miss the whole thing. And I'm not saying they can't have fantastic stories, but you anchor it with authentic details. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Then you can go off all kinds of directions, but anchor it with authentic details, so then the people watching will follow. And so, yeah,
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why I like Snowfall so much is because when you watch it, it seems so relatable because it doesn't seem corny and it doesn't seem like
yeah,
they're trying too hard to make it seem like, more than what it was,
yeah. They had good writers. They had other consultants, and so I think that's what helped. When you get the right people, these Hollywood stories come alive. If you get the wrong people, you know what I'm saying, they don't know what's going on, they don't know who's who and what's what. Terrible. terrible stories. I was on another TV show where I wouldn't mention, and they had me on there, but I quit them, even though they paid me a lot of money, because they wouldn't listen to me. It was one of the most phoniest gang TV shows ever, you know, and that's what they get. The show didn't last a season. You know what I'm saying? Because they were just so phony. They said they come up with this stuff. They were trying to make like East LA gangs, like New York gangs. You know what I'm saying? And it's two different worlds. You can't compare them. You can't put them together. And there it's because they brought in all these New York white people to write and everything. What I liked about Snowfall is they brought in a lot of people of color. They brought in people who had some relationship, who knew what was up, and I think that's what made for a good TV show.
Well, that's a pretty cool thing to put on your resume, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I got so much, dude. I've written plays. I got all this books. I've been around the world, you know. And I've
Yeah.
been on TV shows. I want to say my life is full. And you know, when knowing what was running, I didn't never thought I was going to live beyond 18 years old. I did
Yeah.
everything I could to actually die. I thought I needed to die in a blaze of glory. I got shot at half a dozen times. I never got hit again. Now, people say, well, God's on your side. And I know what I want to say about that is I don't believe that. I don't understand why God wasn't on anybody else's side. People far better than me got shot once and they're gone. So the only thing I will say, it's a mystery that I don't want to have to answer.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I don't want to say God was with you or not, but I will say one thing, just like I told my son, we've been given a break to still give back. We've been lucky somehow, lucky and maybe in a divine sense, you know. Now we got to do the best we can with what we've been given. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And
Yeah.
that's what I decided to do. That's the only thing that isn't a mystery. I'm here to do something. I should have been dead like a lot of people that didn't make it. I OD'd on drugs 3 times, came
Yeah.
back. I should have been dead, but I'm not. So I don't want to answer by saying, you know, all the stuff that people say that makes them feel good. That's good. I think I have to. Some things have to be mysteries. It's a mystery to me why I survived. Even when I was in the contra war, that's why I've survived a lot of things.
Yeah.
But here I am. Let's do some good. And my life has been full. And I will have to say that's a blessing that now I got to help with others, give blessings to others as well.
I feel the same way. I almost died July 18th, 2011. So I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary here in a month.
Mm,
And that's actually my 10 years of sobriety mark too.
yeah.
So I'm in the same boat where I just want to be able to give back and help
Yeah.
as many people as I possibly can, and
Yeah.
just be there to help. That's the whole purpose behind this podcast, and
Yeah.
whole purpose behind my music as well. But mainly this podcast because I just want to be able to help give some guidance and some inspiration to the next generation, and hopefully to the generations that come after them as well. Because with technology, man, like this stuff sticks around even longer than
Yeah.
we'll be here. So that's the goal. So
And I
thank you so
appreciate
much.
talking with you because you're a younger generation. You're actually probably the age of my grandkids, you know. So, but it's good that we can still speak, that we can still learn from each other.
Yeah,
That there's still some knowledge I can give you, but I'm also learning from you. I always learn from young people. If it was just a thing where I'm older, I'm more wise, I would be wrong. There's a lot of wisdom in young people, and you got to be open to that. But I'm glad that people are open to hear what some of us have been through from a previous generation, because it's kind of connected to what our young people are going through now. In many ways, I think worse than what
yeah,
we had to go through. And
yeah.
so it's important that we play that role, and not to be controlling, just to give knowledge and wisdom back to the people.
Thank you so much, Luis.
Yeah,
This has
man.
been a really inspiring conversation. I've gotten a lot from it, so I guarantee you there's going to be other people that will as well. Like I said, this feels really full circle to me because I can still remember reading your book, and to be able to have this conversation with you it's very fulfilling for me. So thank
Mhm.
you.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate your audience, and I hope we can do this again.
Likewise. Is there anything that you would like to say? I always ask my guests if there's any advice that you would give to a young person that might be going through it right now. Like, what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, for one thing, is don't feel alone. I used to feel alone. A lot of people are going there, so try to connect with people. Try to connect with healthy people. Try to find healthy communities. They are there. You may not think they are, but they are. And then try to realize that a lot of young people are going through the alienations, the pain, the numbness, all these things that everybody's going through. And it says something about this whole society, not just that individual. So you're not alone in this world.
Thank you, Luis. Is there any way that people could reach out to you, or if they want to look up stuff that you've done, can you give them some contact information?
So they should contact me at my website, luisjrodriguez.com. I also have for Tiachuchas, tiachucha.org. You can reach me there and get all our programming. And you should know that if you go to Google Drive, you put the Hummingbird Cricket Hour with D in it, THE, the Hummingbird Cricket Hour, you'll get the podcast that me and my wife do. We've been doing a podcast too, and you can find out more about the things that we're talking about.
All right. So that's Luis J. Rodriguez, everybody. We are going to make sure that his contact information is available in our descriptions. So if you want to reach out or if you want to check out the stuff that he's done, I highly recommend to anybody that, you know, has any youth in their life that might be going through some struggles, you know, gangs, drugs, street life. Just recommend them Always Running. That book, I'm sure, has changed a lot of people's lives aside from my own. And I think it's just a timeless book that anybody that is going through that situation could relate to and pull some hope from. So thank you, Luis. You know, your contributions are you know, timeless. And I'm very grateful to have you on the podcast today. I always end the show by saying that one person can change the world, but it's one person at a time, and that one person is you. So stay tuned. Make sure you follow us on social media and hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, and just stay tuned for more inspiring content. Until the next time, see you guys later.
See, the thing is, you just can't think about it. You just gotta let go and trust in yourself. 'Cause you good. Here we go now, 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 here we go now. So let's go. All you gotta do is jump. Don't be scared, just jump. Ready, set, jump, jump, yeah, jump, jump. All you gotta do is jump, yeah. Take a leap and trust that you'll land on your feet. All you gotta do is jump. Tell them snakes goodbye. I'ma teach you how to fly. All you gotta do is jump. Skydiving in a hurricane. Left my parachute like I never heard of pain. Hit my bullseye with perfect aim. Now I'm killing them softly like when Roberta sang. Yeah, you could do the same. You could choose the fame, but don't confuse the game. You could paint a picture, then you can choose the frame. You can leave your mark. Can they remove the stain? Don't worry about them